Yep, it's Gospel of Luke time. I know everybody's been waiting with cookies and milk for this to happen. Like when I used to watch Romper Room last month. No, many decades ago. Um, Something just occurred to me. I wonder what you'd think of it. I am thinking maybe I ought to get into the book of Acts before the Gospel of John, seeing as how it does appear more or less to be intended as a sequel to Luke and carries on a lot of the same themes and would allow us to get into the whole Bauer thing about the different factions in the early church and Simon Magus and all that. And that's It's a pretty long book, but a lot of it we could probably get by without a microscopic scrutiny of everything in it. And well, let me know what you think of that. I'm curious. I'm eager to get into the Gospel of John as well, but it would make sense maybe to do Luke and Acts together. And let me know what you think. See, I think we were up to chapter 20. We're getting close to the end here, fairly close anyway. Okay, let's take a look at 20, verse 1. One day, as he was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel, what gospel is that? Well, the coming of the kingdom of God, apparently, right? Let's see, the chief priests and the scribes with the elders came up and said to him, tell us by what authority you do these things, or who it is that gave you this authority. What things? Presumably the cleansing of the temple bit, right? Um, I doubt if he needed particular authority to teach, unless we think of what we've seen a couple of times already, that people say, what is this? A new teaching and with authority. Is it? I suppose it's possible it's a reference to that. And what would that authority be? Well, in Mark, they kind of imply, I think, that, well, what he says must be true, because look, this guy can cast out demons and so forth. Well, that of course is illogical, right? I mean, it's sort of logical. They're saying, well, he must be in good with God if he can do that, so he must have particularly sensitive ear to what God says. But technically, the one has nothing to do with the other. You can do a miracle, but that doesn't mean your opinions on everything are right. Let's see here. So what I think it has to do more likely with the cleansing of the temple. He answered them, I also will ask you a question. Now tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from men? Of course, that means, where did he get the authority to do that? Because, I mean, isn't it kind of presumptuous? John the Baptist says, hey, everybody, the axe is laid at the root of the tree. The final judgment is at hand, and you better clean up your act fast. And don't worry, if you allow me to baptize as a token of your repentance, your sins will be washed away. Who says? John? Did he just come up with the scheme, or did he? Was he at least implicitly said God had sent him, and so Jesus is saying, well, was that true? Was he sent by God, or was he just winging it? And so, what are they going to say? So that they get into a huddle here. And verse 5, and they discussed it with one another, saying, if we say from heaven, that is from God, that he gave me authority, he will say, why did you not believe him? But if we say, yeah, from men, all the people will stone us, for they are convinced that John was a prophet. Of course, the crowd is right there, right? So they're in imminent danger. So they answered that they did not know whence it was. And Jesus said to them, why am I not surprised? Well, he actually says, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. Of course, he doesn't mean I am similarly ignorant like you. Who am I to say whether John and so on? Well, is he saying, yeah, I really can't? You're saying basically we're still looking into that, and I don't think Jesus is saying, well, I guess we think alike here because I'm not really sure where I got the authority. I'm still looking into it. No, he just means you're not giving me a straight answer, so you don't deserve one back. And but what they thought, he thought, of course. I mean, everybody realized he said that God had sent him, like all the prophets did, right? 9, and he began to tell the people this parable. A man planted a vineyard and let it out to tenants and went into another country for a long while. And when the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants, the sharecroppers, right? And went into another, give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him, the messenger, and sent him away empty handed. And he sent another servant. Him also they beat and treated shamefully, and sent him away empty handed. And he sent yet a third. This one they wounded and cast out. This is not quite as severe as it is in Mark and Matthew, right? But same idea. Then the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? There's a little Lucan flourish, right? He's added it to this one, though he didn't create this one. He got it from Mark. What shall I do? I will send my beloved son. It may be they will respect him. But when and now beloved son, it really comes to the surface in Luke's version that, of course, he's talking about the prophets and then he himself. They didn't listen to the prophets. Just watch. They're not going to listen to the Son. And that's putting it mildly. Okay, 14. But when the tenants saw him, they said to themselves, hey, this is the heir. Let us kill him that the inheritance may be ours. And they cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. So he doesn't say so, but it's pretty obvious. The reader would have known this is the heir. Oh, the owner must be dead. And this guy's the new owner, but not for long, because as the tenants of the place, if he dies, wouldn't that be a shame? Then whoever is living on it gets the land. So we could use that. No more sharecropping, and just be ours. Okay, what then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy those tenants and give the vineyard to others. It doesn't say a nation who will take better care of it, like in Matthew, right? To others. There'll be these leaders of God's people have proven corrupt and ineffective and so forth. So he's going to fire them, actually kill them in the parable, and the owner will hire a new bunch of sharecroppers who will cough up what they owe him. When they heard this, the elders and Pharisees and all those guys, they said, God forbid. But he looked at them and said, what then is this that is written? The very stone which the builders rejected has become the the head of the corner. End of quote. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces. But when it falls on anyone, it will crush him. And of course, he's thinking of himself as the rejected cornerstone. right? Couldn't these guys see that this was integral to the building? You're throwing away the wrong thing. Shudder to think what you're going to replace it with. The whole place is going to probably be proved to be too heavy for the stone they pick will not bear the weight, and the whole darn thing will come crashing down. But the to replace it, they're going to need a new cornerstone, and they're going to go with the one that these guys had stupidly rejected. And then it's very similar to the thing at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. Are you building your house on sand stupidly, or are you building it on a firm foundation? Well, if they choose the wrong cornerstone, it's like building on sand, and kerplump, the whole thing's going to drop. But somebody is going to, God is going to pick up the stone they wrongly rejected and build the whole thing on that basis. And that will stand. I think that's kind of implied in the whole shebang. So they say, God forbid, oh, that's tragic, or that's horrible. He says, yeah, well, Scripture anticipates it, at least in principle. And he quotes this thing, the very stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. And so this is predicting, you guys are the murderers. Don't think I don't know what you're planning. And it's going to happen. But you will face the music, because you seem to think there is nobody in charge, right? Oh, the owner must be dead. You have nothing to fear. You can brashly get away with this, but I'm warning you, you cannot. So what you did to the son will happen to you. Okay, so we know where everybody stands. In verse 19, the scribes and the chief priests tried to lay hands on him at that very hour, but they feared the people, for they perceived that he had told this parable against them. I mean, it was obvious enough to the people at the time. Oh, yeah, I know who he's talking about with those tenants. That much is realistic, because, as I said before, we know from the Mishnah, the collection of sayings of the scribes and rabbis and so on, that they thought the house of Annas was a bunch of snakes. They didn't hold them in any particular reverence. So it made sense to them when Jesus says these guys are bungling their responsibilities, they're vicious, they're ruthless, and they're getting theirs. And the people say, yeah, I know what you mean. Tell it, brother. And they say, and so they say, how the scribes, etc., the priests say, how dare he speak of us that way? It's obvious enough even to this bunch of cattle. Let's kill him right now and get it over with. And shh. One of them says, don't you realize you're asking for the mob to lynch us if you do that? Oh, darn it. Yeah, okay. Okay, separate incident starts. Like from there on in verse 20. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere, that they might take hold of what he said, so as to deliver him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. So that they're going to pose questions while they pose as sincere questioners. We'd like to know your opinion. It counts for something around here. Yeah, right. You're just looking for something like, got him. Wait till the procurator hears this. Is that going to work? Well, you know it isn't, right? They asked him in verse 21, Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not? And you know what lies behind that, the memory of the 6 AD war against Roman taxation led by the rabbi Judas of Galilee. And this resulted in thousands of Jews being crucified, a real mess. And so they're asking him the tricky question: are you going to say the same thing as Judas of Galilee did, that, oh no, it's not lawful for us as Jews to pay tribute, taxes to this false god of Caesar? No, we can't do that. We got to draw the line right there. And so they want Jesus to say that. And so they can then say, oh yes, yes. And then go to the procurator's office and say, hey, we heard him say this. He's trying to foment revolution. He says we shouldn't pay taxes to you. They wind up saying that anyway, even though Jesus doesn't say that, right? And we've been over this before. I think very highly of the cleverness of this, right? 23, perceived their craftiness and said to them, show me a denarius coin. And so, yeah, here's one. It says, whose likeness and inscription has it? Oh, I should use a visual aid here. Yeah. How about this? Whose image and likeness is on this denarius? And they said, oh, it's Chuck E. Cheese. It happens to be in this case. But of course, it was Caesar in the Bible case. Right, okay. And they said, oh, it's Chucky, it's Caesar's. And he said to them in verse 25, then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, these Roman coins, right? And to God the things that are God's. Well, what would that be? Well, Jewish and Phoenician coins that were in common use that didn't have images of people. Remember, you shall not make for yourself a graven image of anything in the heaven above, on the earth below, or the waters under the earth. Well, that would kind of include Caesar's kisser, wouldn't it? Especially since he's supposed to be divine. And so God doesn't want any part of that. That's filthy lucre in his eyes. That's why at the temple you had to change your Roman money, which no one blamed you for using in everyday commerce. It's the Roman Empire, after all. What the heck? But in the house of God, you can't use stinking Roman money with an idolatrous image to buy animals to sacrifice to the God of Israel. So God has one currency, the Roman Empire has another. For you to give Roman money to the Romans is no compromise. It's theirs anyway. Ultimately, they minted the stuff. But with God, he's only concerned about in this case, at least we assume, he only wants you to use coins that don't violate the Ten Commandments, right? And so there's no compromise. Sure, we can pay Caesar all the taxes. What the heck? And they were not able in the presence of the people to catch him by what he said, but marveling at his answer, they, who's that, presumably the people, but it could be the elders and all that, marveling at his answer, they were silent. So I'm assuming they didn't expect this. I mean, they probably agreed with him. Hey, I never thought of it that way. Huh. Well, that's not going to do us any good, though, because we can't tell Caesar's representative, Pilate, that he's saying don't pay taxes. And then later on, when they're getting baffled, what are we going to say? Well, let's just say he said we shouldn't pay taxes to Caesar. What the heck? Who'll be the wiser? Okay, the next contestant on Stump the Messiah, in 27, there came to him some Sadducees, those who say that there is no resurrection, also no angels, no spirits, etc. 28, and they asked him a question. saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies having a wife but no children, the man must take the wife and raise up children for his brother. Now, this isn't saying that if the guy and his wife did have children and the husband dies, it's incumbent on his brother to raise the kids, to be the support for the family. No, it's the same principle, but of course they're saying he has to marry the woman and beget children with her, and the children will be considered the legal heirs of the dead man. Now that leaves us in a fix. Will he have no heirs? I mean, is this going to be a second wife so that he might have his own children already that would be his own heirs, but any that he begets with his brother's widow, kind of like Abraham and Hagar, they would be considered the dead man? I would assume so. I would assume that you could have polygamy under such circumstances. We know they did under similar circumstances, at least. Okay, but we're not done. Verse 28. Now, here's a hypothetical. Now, suppose there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children. And the second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. Afterward, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had her as wife. Oh, now that's a goodie, right? Assuming they're all righteous and they're all raised from the dead, and presumably they are righteous because they've obeyed the levirate marriage law, are they going to be joyfully reunited, all 8 of them, the husband and the 7 wives? Well, imagine the hen pecking in that barnyard, right? And so it's absurd. It's a reductio ad absurdum argument. If you take that out to the logical conclusion, you'll see no, it's absurd. It couldn't be true if it has such consequences. Nah. And so that just tells you there's no resurrection. Well, Jesus says, no, that tells you something else. Jesus said to them, the sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are accounted worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they cannot die any more, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, the burning bush in Exodus 3, I guess it is, where he calls Adonai, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Now, he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him. And some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well. For they no longer dared to ask him any question. Are these people insincere? I don't think so, because it's like the scribes, who were Pharisees generally, and the Sadducees have allied themselves against Jesus to get rid of him. It's an uneasy alliance because the Sadducees rejected most of the doctrines of the Pharisees. Pharisees. And so, since that really isn't the point, they're like shelving that dispute for the moment. And now the Pharisees, the scribes, are thinking, "Oh boy, I wonder how he's going to answer this one. I kind of hope he rebuts the Sadducees, because at least Jesus shares with us the belief in the resurrection of the dead." And then it turns out, yeah, they kind of won the battle but lost the war here, and so they kind of have to acknowledge Jesus scored one on this one here. This is a bit more fulsome. It says he's saying that the reason those resurrected from the dead won't have a what's the word? Polyandrous relationship in a case like this, a woman with several husbands. That was verboten in Judaism. Oh no. Under certain circumstances, a man could have more than one wife, but this is a different set of circumstances, and this wouldn't apply, I guess. But why is there no marriage in heaven? I mean, is Jesus simply positing that? Because if that were true, it would get him out of a jam. It might be, but at least there's more explanation, right? That there's no death, right, at the resurrection. Nobody's going to die anymore. And how can that be? Well, they're not merely like resuscitated like somebody on the operating table. They become like angels. They have a celestial body of some sort, and they're deathless. So they're not only are their bodies not going to wear out and die, but since there's no death, there's no need for procreation. And with no procreation, there's no, because everybody that's there will live forever. You don't need to replace yourself since you're going to die, because you're not if you've gotten that far to the resurrection. And this implies that you have a superhuman body, a la 1 Corinthians 15, with a spiritual or pneumatic body. And so it's sort of unpacking the thing. What about Moses and the burning bush? Well, we've been over that before too. He says, "I am the God of Abe and Ike and Jake, not I was," which implies they're still around to have him as their God, and vice versa, that he can be their God because they're still around. He doesn't say, "Yeah, I used to be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but they're long gone." No, they're still around as far as he's concerned. All are alive unto him. Does that imply the resurrection of the dead? I don't think so. It might mean that there's immortality in heaven once you die, and then perhaps later you will be reunited with your body by virtue of resurrection. But that in the meantime, you are God. You are alive to God. You're just not re-embodied yet. And there were such things in intertestamental Judaism, like that there were sections of heaven, like Abraham's bosom, where Lazarus goes, seems to be one of those. The resurrection certainly hasn't happened as of yet, but and presumably it's going to. But Lazarus is in a sort of heaven compartment enjoying himself in the meantime. So I think such distinctions are implied here. But the point is, it's heavenly immortality in a kind of waiting room but that doesn't describe resurrection of the dead. So yeah, Jesus says that based on a verb tense, which seems a kind of ridiculous argument, but it wasn't to them. That's the way they played the game of interpretation. That what was I? He is arguing that there is an afterlife, but not necessarily resurrection of the body, though he does believe in that too. But this argument is sort of, I think, misses the target a little bit. So they've had it. They say, well, this is getting us nowhere. This guy always has an answer. It's just making us look like fools. We don't want that. We better try something else. But now Jesus has the high ground. The crowd has heard him put these people in their place. Oh, yeah, I see. Boy, he is pretty sharp, this guy. Sharper than those buffoons who pretend to rule us. Well, 41, he goes on the offensive. But he said to them, how can they say that the Christ is David's son? For David himself says in the book of Psalms, quote, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make thy enemies a stool for thy feet. End of quote. Psalm 110. And in the hearing of all the people, he said to his disciples, no, well, wait a minute, verse 44. David thus calls him Lord, so how is he his son? Now, this is filled with understandable errors common at the time. They didn't have critical methods of analysis. David doesn't say this. Everybody assumed David wrote most of the Psalms, and the validity of the argument depends upon David having said this. So that's a big problem. He said to my Lord, let's assume that means the Messiah. Well, it did mean the King of Judah in the psalm. It's a coronation psalm for him. Sit at my right hand till I make thy enemies a stool for thy feet. Of course, the speaker is supposed to be God. David or whoever wrote it is describing God welcoming the new king of Judah, his anointed one, to the throne. And so David is not saying it to somebody. David is saying God did. And the Lord is assumed to be the Messiah. And then Jesus is saying, if David is saying this to the Messiah in some manner, would he call him his Lord? I mean, even if he was a superior guy in the pecking order up there, you would never have a Jew, whether king or commoner, referring to his son as his Lord. No, a very strict standard of filial piety. You just wouldn't have that no matter who you're talking about. So he says, well, this would seem to rule out the common scribal notion that when the Messiah comes, he will be a descendant of David. How could he have said this? And who would, well, let me say, why does Luke, following Mark, why does he say this? You mean the Messiah is not descended from David? Well, there were people that at least thought there would be two Messiahs, a priestly and a royal one, and that at least the priestly one was not to be descended from David. Or you might be thinking of the Samaritans who believed the prophet like Moses would be their equivalent to the Messiah, the Taheb, the restorer. Because their ancestors had repudiated the Davidic dynasty centuries ago. So the last thing they'd want to see is a new David. Oh, no, not another one of those. Or it could be just Galileans that decided, hey, we're Ephraimites. We're from the north. And look at the stories of Joseph. He has a predictive dream that all that he is. What is it? The son and all the and his family members are all the. No, it can't be. Well, they're all the stars and the planets are bowing down to him, and his brothers are saying, "This brat has delusions of grandeur. I'm sick of him. What about the rest of you?" Well, wait a minute. Isn't this dream saying that a descendant of Joseph will be a the Messiah, something like that? Well, sure enough, in apparently earlier than Jesus, they did have the idea of a Messiah ben Joseph, that is a northern Messiah descended from Ephraim and or Manasseh, who were Ephraimites, northern Israelites, descendants of Joseph. Well, yeah, something like that's going on, and I'm guessing some such group started this. They love Jesus, but they don't believe he as the Messiah. They love him, but they venerate him as the memory of him and so forth. But they don't think he's the scion of David, the son and standard bearer for King David. So he's really exposing him. Apparently, they never thought of this and didn't have an answer for it. 45. And in the hearing of all the people, he said to his disciples, "Beware of the scribes who like to go about in long robes and love salutations in the marketplaces. Oh, hey, Father, how are you doing? I'll see you in the pancake supper tonight in the parish hall." Oh, yeah, they love that, you know. Yeah, and the best seats. They love the best seats in the synagogue. Oh, right this way, Your Eminence. Uh, but in verse 47, who devour widows' houses. That is, the woman can't pay the taxes or the rent or whatever, and they just kick her out and take it for themselves, resell it or whatever. Uh, and for a pretense make long prayers. I mean, they're just coming to the synagogue after evicting some lady, throwing her out into the street because she can't pay the tax. It's like what George Bailey says about Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life. Some of these people don't have jobs. They've got families and children. They're not my children. That's exactly the idea expressed here. Yeah, they love being treated like religious dignitaries, but in fact, in privacy, they like to kick out widows who can't pay the mortgage, and to them, and then they go and make the long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. Well, greater than what? Greater than that of average sinners, right? That the people that make no pretense of religiosity and piety, these stinking hypocrites are much worse than them. So they're really going to get the boom lowered on them. So very fascinating stuff. Not only the underlying material, but also the Lucan redaction. Quite interesting. So let's get on to some questions. You pretend you're the scribes and the Sadducees, and you're trying to catch me in my words. Richard says, "Top of the afternoon to you." Thank you. New Genesis Connection. I've been following you on Simon Magus and Paul. They cross paths too many times for it to be a coincidence. Yes, you are not far from the kingdom of God. Yeah, I'm glad you see some merit in it. And then she goes on to say, in my opinion, Acts more likely was written in the mid-second century, and much of the info was copied from Josephus. Right again, you are, Miguel. Right, that's certainly right. I mean, as more and more scholars see the wisdom of this, there's all kinds of reasons to place Luke mid-second century, and I won't go into all of that now. But it also is becoming more and more acknowledged that he used Josephus. There's a few places in there, and in Luke and Acts. And let me see. Now, they used to deny that because that would mean that, Josephus is writing at the end of the first century. And so if you're using Josephus, you're later than that. But luckily, fewer scholars are listening to the old apologist party line. So I think you are entirely right. Optical CHZ Opticalcs. Okay, it's a commercial actually. See, Daniel Hopkins says the absent father / tenant theme is also in the Lotus Sutra and other Mahayana texts where the Buddha fakes his death because people would take him for granted and not glorify him. Fascinating. Wow, I'll have to look into that. I know there is a very much longer version of the prodigal son parable in the Saddharma Pundarika, the great Mahayana text, the Lotus of the True Law. Yeah, I gotta find out about that. Fascinating. Here's a vote to do the Book of Acts next from Richard. Thanks. Yeah, all right. This one, Daniel says Maitreya, the future Buddha to come, is also called Seeker of Fame compared to Christ in his glory. What do you know? Interesting. I love Buddhist stuff. Yeah. Dave Harden suggests Luke, then Acts of the Apostles for Irenaeus, followed by John and the Acts of John for a comparative heretical view. That'd be kind of good, kind of fun. Yes, I like it. Yeah, Luke, then Acts, and promotes the Catholic view, and then John and the Acts of John. Yeah, I like that. Okay, let's do it. Graham Pong, thoughts on the Maitreya, Buddhi, Kalki, Mahdi, Saoshyant, and Christ, all pulling from the same underlying tradition / foundation. It could be, but it could just be what Martin Debelius called the law of biographical analogy. The same sort of thing was said about King Arthur, Frederick Barbarossa, Napoleon, and others, that they either didn't die or did, but in either case would come back in the hour of their people's greatest need. So it could simply have been that. We can't. How can the world ultimately get along without Mr. Big? He wouldn't just abandon us, like Jesus says in the Gospel of John. I will not leave you as orphans. And that may just be a kind of recurring theological tendency. But I don't know. These traditions could easily have been aware of one another, and even the Mahdi, that could have inherited the the returning savior uh, theme from Christianity. Who knows? Fascinating. A New Genesis connection. The temple and the money changers reflects today. Ain't it the truth? And the Zionists are the money changers of the International Monetary Fund / Federal Reserve / capital banking and control the world through interest. A house of thieves. I know some people say that Zionism is just sort of a front for commercial interests of the Rothschilds family and all that. I'm in no position to evaluate that. I really don't have, I got only a limited amount of time, and that's really a whole field of historical inquiry. So I don't know, but religion sure has been used as a lucrative gimmick for a long time. New Genesis connection. Again, in my opinion, I believe that Abraham married his brother Haran's wife, Sarah, as Haran had passed and Sarah was considered barren when Abraham married her. So that his wife was in effect, or in a sense, his sister. Interesting. I've never heard that theory. It makes some sense. Wow. Daniel Hopkins' Maitreya is also titled Maha Metea, which seems to equal Muhammad, probably also Mithra or Mitra or Metatron. Whoa, well, you're getting into waters deeper than I can swim in. That is fascinating. I mean, it could be false cognates, but I wouldn't jump to that conclusion. You may be right. That is, I know there's a Maitreya Mitra connection that's been hypothesized. The thing about Muhammad, I didn't know how that would fit in. Very interesting. Very interesting. Why? This is ostensibly questions, but it's often really answers that I didn't think of. New Genesis connection. Jesus declared that he resided in the bosom of God, and upon baptism, they will make their abode with us in our bosom. Well, the Gospel of John says that the Word is in the bosom of the Father. And the two of them will make their home in us, he says in I think the Last Supper discourse. Fascinating. She says again, it would only be logical that Eve was taken from the bosom of Adam, of his own body. Yeah, and remember, some of the ancient rabbis took that to mean that the first Adam, or human being, was an androgyne, split down the middle, very much as Zoroastrianism said about Gaiomar, the primal man, or Plato's was it the Timaeus or the Symposium that Zeus split egg-shaped primal humans into. Let's see. Richard mentions Messiah ben Joseph dies in battle and is resurrected. Yep. Yeah, very good. There's a good book out on Messiah ben Joseph. I think that's simply the title. Oh, 2 thumbs up from Peter on Acts. Okay. New Genesis connection. isn't it similar being divorced with children to, or similar or equal to being a widow? Yeah, and there's a similar similar not motivation, a similar maneuver applied there. If a guy divorces his wife, even though it's going to technically go into the book as adultery, the woman has no choice but to remarry if she can. Yeah, that's the first marriage counts in God's eyes, but the human heart sometimes gets hard. And what do you expect her to just starve in the street, especially with kids? No. So that's why Jesus doesn't necessarily rule out divorce. He says, look, it's obvious from Genesis that the plan of God was that once you're joined together, you stay together. But come on, let's face it. If you marry the wrong person, why should life be a living hell for you? Let's be realistic. Pet Muir says, I love the way you introduce humor, accents, voices, even songs in your exposition. It makes it so listenable. Yeah, I have found for decades that students love the stand-up comic approach. And since I'm inclined that way anyway, I feel like I'm on stage and it's just loads of fun to do all this stuff. And sometimes those are the best illustrations to drive the point home. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Well, let's see. New Genesis Connection. My greatest question is, who was Luke? And who was the mysterious Theophilus that Luke was writing to, and in what century? Well, I say that that Luke was, in all probability, Polycarp, Bishop of Smyrna, a noted anti-Marcionite, the man that adapted and inflated Marcion's New Testament into the 27-book version that we have today, and that would have been in the early to mid 2nd century already. It didn't get mandated as the only version to use until a couple of hundred years later, in 365, in the Easter encyclical of St. Athanasius. And even then, not everybody went along with it. And but Polycarp, I think, did expand the Marcionite gospel into our Luke. So the first author of Luke would have been Marcion. The second would have been Polycarp, and whom I identify with as Bultmann's ecclesiastical redactor, though he uses the term for the one who altered the Gospel of John. And what about Theophilus, Bishop of Antioch, a colleague and friend of Polycarp? And all this would have happened in the mid to late 2nd century. I'm pretty sold on all of that. Okay, another vote for going into Acts. And that is it for the questions. I have to say I can't quite regret that. I'm feeling pretty beat today. I don't know why. I think I got enough sleep. But I'm probably going to go take a nap now. At 6, we're having, as always, the Bible Geek, but with a special guest. The great Ralph Ellis will be on with me, and you can ask him questions as well. That should be really a lot of fun. And then tomorrow, 4 p.m., I'll be on with me doing for Gnostic Sabbath. I'll be doing an old sermon of mine that I think you'll enjoy, called The Gnostic Ministry, which gets into some church history and Walter Bauer and other stuff too. So I will see you tonight at 6 with Ralph.